I had just set down the old wooden trunk I'd brought back from the countryside, steadying it against the corner of the wall, when Ethan Brooks pushed the door open and walked in. He was wearing a crisp military uniform, the insignia on his shoulders gleaming coldly under the dim yellow light, a sharp contrast to the cracked mud walls and the faded bedding in the room. In his hand, he held a neatly folded piece of paper. Before I could even lower the hand that was wiping sweat from my forehead, he slapped it down hard on the 8 Immortals table with a sharp thud. "Sign it, Anna." His voice, like his entire presence, was rigid and cold, completely devoid of warmth. I looked up and glanced at the paper. It was a divorce certificate issued by the Army. The bold words at the top were striking, and his name, Ethan Brooks, was already signed in neat, sharp strokes that radiated impatience. It was the spring of 1978, the second day after we had returned from the countryside. For 3 long years, I had followed him to a remote military outpost, enduring endless hardship, washing his clothes, cooking his meals, mending his uniforms, and doing everything without a single complaint. I had thought that once we returned, we could finally live a peaceful, steady life. But what awaited me instead was this divorce certificate. I didn't rush to sign it. I just looked at him calmly, not to question, but to hear what excuse he would use to justify himself. Ethan frowned, as if my silence was unnecessary. "I can't live with you anymore," he said after a pause, his tone laced with contempt. "Look at you. You're so plain, so unsophisticated. You don't fit in with the other officers' wives in the compound. You just embarrass me." I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. What a pathetic excuse. During those 3 years in the countryside, how could I have had the means to dress up? Every day I was busy from dawn until night, all for this family. But in his eyes, all he could see was how plain I looked, never the effort I had given. My mother, Margaret, heard the noise and rushed out. When she saw the divorce papers on the table, her face went pale. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she cried. "You and Anna just got back home. How can you be talking about divorce already? Can't you talk things out?" Ethan didn't even glance at her. His eyes stayed fixed on me, cold and impatient. "Mom, this is between me and Anna. Please stay out of it. She's signing this today, whether she wants to or not. The Army's already issued the certificate." He was certain I wouldn't dare resist. I picked up the fountain pen from the table. The nib scraped against the paper, making a faint rustling sound. My mother grabbed my arm in a panic, whispering desperately, "Anna, don't be impulsive. Please don't. How will you live after the divorce?" But I neither turned back nor hesitated. Stroke by stroke, I wrote my name, Anna Brooks, in firm, steady handwriting. The moment I set the pen down, Ethan was clearly taken aback. He had probably expected me to cry, to beg him, to throw a scene, maybe even run to his unit to protest. But I didn't. For a brief instant, something like guilt flickered across his cold face, but it quickly disappeared, replaced by disdain, as if to say, just a clueless countrywoman, so quick to let go. "Since you've signed," he said flatly, "we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau first thing tomorrow morning to finalize the divorce." He folded the papers, tucked them neatly into his uniform pocket, and turned to leave without another word. The door shut behind him with a heavy bang, a dull sound that felt like a careless full stop to our marriage. My mother pulled me into her arms, her voice trembling as tears filled her eyes. "Oh, my foolish girl, why did you really sign it, Anna? How could you be so stubborn?" Mom patted my arm in distress, but my heart felt strangely clear. This marriage had long been like a rotting rope, forcing 2 people to stay tied together only made us both miserable. Now that it had snapped, maybe it was finally freedom. "Don't cry, Mom," I said softly. "This divorce is the right thing to do." The next morning, just as the sky began to brighten, Ethan Brooks was already standing by the gate, waiting. He was still dressed in that sharp military uniform, but his frown was deeper, his expression impatient. By the time I finished washing up and put on a clean blue blouse, my mother, Margaret, was right behind me, her eyes still red. She clutched the hem of my jacket, reluctant to let go. "Anna, are you really not going to think it over?" she asked again, her voice trembling, almost pleading. "Even if he hasn't treated you well, he's still a commanding officer. If you stay with him, at least you'll have food to eat and someone to depend on." I gently patted her cold hands. "Mom," I said quietly, Relying on others isn't as good as relying on myself. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Ethan started walking ahead of us, his strides long and fast, not even caring if my mother and I could keep up. The early spring breeze was still chilly, brushing against my face with a dry bite. On the road, we passed a few early rising officers' wives who glanced curiously at the three of us, their eyes full of speculation. Ethan acted as if he didn't notice their stares. He kept walking straight ahead without looking back once. My mother had to half run while holding on to me just to keep up. Between gasps, she whispered urgently in my ear, "When we get to the Civil Affairs Bureau, if the staff asks anything, don't be too stubborn. Try to be softer. Maybe there's still a chance to change his mind." "That's not necessary, Mom," I answered quietly, my eyes fixed on Ethan's back in front of us. After 3 years, I've seen him for who he really is. The only thing he's ever cared about is his own career. I was just a prop in his countryside days. Now that he's back in the city, he wants a wife who matches his status as a commander. "Not necessary?" Mom's voice rose as she tugged at my sleeve, her anxiety overflowing. "A divorced woman's reputation is ruined. Who will marry you after this? Anna, you're my only daughter. How can I not worry?" I knew she meant well. In those days, divorce was a huge deal for a woman, painful enough to drown her. But I wasn't afraid. I had already made up my mind. Once the divorce was final, I'd rely on my own 2 hands to make money and give both of us a better life. It was 1978, and policies were beginning to loosen. The city markets were slowly coming back to life, and more people were secretly doing small businesses. I remembered an aunt from the neighboring village who secretly sold homemade pickles last year and made quite a bit of money. I had learned from my grandmother how to make osmanthus cakes and sour jujube pastries. My skills weren't bad. If I could set up a small stall, I could probably make a living. Thinking about that, my steps felt lighter. Ethan seemed to notice that I had fallen behind. He stopped, turned around, and shot me an impatient look. "Hurry up. Stop dragging your feet. The Civil Affairs Bureau opens at 8, and I don't want to be late for work." "I know," I replied flatly and tightened my grip on my mother's hand as we quickened our pace. Mom kept murmuring beside me, "When we get there, don't smile, but don't argue either. Even if you're getting divorced, make sure you part on good terms." "Keep it dignified," my mother whispered. I nodded, pretending to agree on the surface, but inside, I couldn't help thinking that this marriage had never been one that ended well. At least it was ending now. That was already the best possible outcome. All I wanted was to get that divorce certificate as soon as possible, to be free of this man completely, and start a new life. As we approached the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Mom gripped my hand tightly again and lowered her voice. "Anna, remember what I told you. Don't be impulsive, don't let your feelings show. If you lose your temper in there, you'll only make a scene and give people something to gossip about." She was afraid I might explode inside the office and embarrass myself. I smiled faintly at her, my gaze steady. "Don't worry, Mom, I won't make a scene. After today, everything will be fine." Ethan Brooks was already at the bureau's entrance, turning back to glance at us coldly, as if to hurry us along. I took a deep breath, held my mother's hand, and stepped inside. The office was small, its whitewashed walls already yellowing at the corners, with faint gray marks smudging the bottom. 2 wooden counters stood by the window. Behind them sat a staff member wearing a blue cloth cap, head bent over a stack of papers, a fountain pen in his hand. Ethan strode straight to the counter and handed over the documents, the divorce certificate from his unit, along with our household registration booklets and marriage certificate. His tone was as cold and formal as ever. "Comrade, we're here to file for divorce." The staff member looked up briefly, his gaze sweeping over the 3 of us. His eyes paused for a few seconds on my tense face and my mother's pale expression, then dropped to Ethan's sharp military uniform. Without asking much, he began processing the paperwork according to procedure. "Both parties agree?" he asked simply. "I agree," Ethan replied before anyone else could speak, his voice loud and commanding, like he was issuing an order. "I agree," I echoed quietly, nodding. Behind me, my mother's palms were sweating. She nudged me lightly with her elbow, hinting that I should say more, maybe try to soften things, but I pretended not to notice. My gaze remained calm, fixed on the staff member's pen as it moved across the paper, writing down our information stroke by stroke. The process wasn't complicated. Verify information, sign, and then stamp the seal. Ethan went through each step swiftly and neatly, as if this wasn't the end of a marriage, but just another mundane task to finish. He didn't look at me once, his eyes locked on the staff member's pen the entire time, urging him silently to move faster. Behind me, Mom stood wringing her hands together, whispering under her breath, "What a sin! What a sin!" Her voice was so soft only I could hear it. I could feel her worry, but my heart was growing lighter and lighter. It was like a heavy stone that had pressed on my chest for years was finally sinking, about to touch the ground. At last, the staff member picked up 2 small red booklets, stamped them firmly with a bright, crisp thud, and slid one toward each of us. "All done. Here are your divorce certificates. Keep them properly." The red booklet felt rough to the touch, the gold lettering embossed on the cover catching the light. To me, it looked like a glimmer of hope, a light shining on the road ahead. I reached out and picked it up. The moment my fingers brushed the cover, all the years of resentment, suppression, and bitterness inside me seemed to vanish into thin air. So this was what freedom felt like: light, effortless. I could finally breathe again. Without realizing it, I smiled. At first, just a small, quiet laugh slipped out. But then I couldn't help it. The smile spread wider, turning into a soft, genuine laugh. "Hey!" Mom reacted instantly. She grabbed me, one hand clamping over my mouth, the other tugging hard at my arm. Mom leaned close, her voice trembling in my ear. "Anna, don't laugh so loud. You'll give yourself away." Her tone was filled with panic, afraid people would realize I was truly happy to be divorced, afraid they'd gossip about me laughing right after ending my marriage, and most of all, afraid Ethan Brooks would take offense. My laughter stopped instantly. With her hand still clamped over my mouth, only a muffled sound escaped my throat. I blinked a few times, signaling that I understood. Mom hesitated before slowly lowering her hand, though she kept a firm grip on my arm, her eyes full of warning. Ethan, who had already picked up his divorce certificate and was about to leave, suddenly stopped when he heard my laugh. He turned back, frowning deeply, staring at me with confusion and irritation, as if he couldn't comprehend what he'd just witnessed. "What are you laughing at?" His voice was cold and sharp, each word edged with displeasure. He really couldn't understand. In his eyes, a woman abandoned by her husband should be crying, full of resentment and heartbreak, maybe even begging him to reconsider. Not smiling. Not like this. I wiped the corner of my mouth, the trace of a smile still lingering on my face. My tone, however, was calm. "Nothing. I just feel relieved that it's finally done." It wasn't entirely true, but it was enough. An answer that explained the smile without revealing the truth behind it. Ethan studied my face for a few seconds, as if searching for something deeper, but my gaze stayed steady, open, calm, unashamed. Seeing nothing, he frowned and gave a short, cold snort. "Since it's done, let's go our separate ways." Without another glance, he turned and strode out of the office, walking even faster than when he came in, as if staying a moment longer would be unbearable. The divorce certificate was stuffed carelessly into the pocket of his uniform, like it was nothing more than a useless scrap of paper. Mom exhaled a long breath, patting my back. "Goodness, Anna, you scared me half to death. Couldn't you have held it in for just a bit longer?" I looked toward the doorway, watching Ethan's figure disappear, then lowered my eyes to the red divorce certificate in my hand. My heart felt clear and bright. "Mom," I said softly, smiling, "I'm really happy. From today on, I can finally live for myself." When we stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the spring sun was already high, spilling warm, golden light across my shoulders. The chill of morning had vanished, replaced by a comforting warmth that seemed to reach all the way into my chest. Mom didn't say much on the way back. She just held my hand tightly, her steps heavy and reluctant. When we returned to the small apartment in the officer's family compound, Mom poured me a cup of hot water. I carefully slipped the divorce certificate into the pocket close to my chest, then sat down across from her. She sighed softly. "Anna, tell me the truth. Had you already wanted to leave him?" I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, letting the heat seep into my palms, and nodded. "Yes, Mom. I'd thought about it for a long time. I just never found the right moment." "Oh, my poor girl," she murmured, frowning, her voice full of pity. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Was he already treating you badly back in the countryside?" I set the cup down and my mind drifted back to those 3 years. When we first arrived at the outpost, conditions were harsh. There wasn't even a proper place to live. We had to stay in a makeshift mud brick hut. In the winter, the wind would cut right through the cracks. In the summer, the rain would leak through the roof. Every day before dawn, I would get up to start the fire and cook breakfast. I washed Ethan's uniform until it was spotless, pressed every crease until it looked sharp. Yet he never once said a single word of thanks. There was one time I caught a terrible cold. My fever was so high that I was shivering all over. I asked him to take a day off to accompany me to the town clinic, but he said the unit had an important mission and told me to endure it on my own. In the end, it was the neighbor's wife, another soldier's spouse, who couldn't stand to see me like that, and took me to the infirmary herself. When I came back, he didn't ask how I was feeling. He only complained that I had delayed washing his clothes. And last winter, when Mom spent an entire day traveling to the outpost, bringing us homemade cured meat and pickled vegetables so we could eat better, Ethan didn't show her a single kind face. During dinner, he even complained that the pickles were too salty and the meat too fatty, embarrassing her in front of everyone. That night, Mom cried quietly under her blanket for half the night. The next morning, she left before sunrise, wiping her eyes as she got on the bus. Before leaving, she told me to take care of myself, and not to argue with him. I had never told her about these things before. I didn't want her to worry. But now that I was divorced, speaking about it out loud actually made me feel lighter. "He never truly cared about this family," I said calmly. "To him, I was nothing more than a servant, someone to cook and wash for him, a decoration for his career. Now that we've returned to the city, he thinks I'm no longer good enough for a commander's wife, so of course he wants to get rid of me." Mom's eyes reddened again. "That heartless man. You and I both suffered so much because of him. How could he be so cruel?" "Don't be sad, Mom," I said softly, holding her hand. "A man like that isn't worth my tears. I used to think if I just endured it, things would get better. For this family, and so you wouldn't have to worry about me. But now I understand. People can't live their whole lives for someone else. I have to live for myself too." "But you're a woman, Anna. How will you live after divorce?" Mom couldn't hide her worry. "Never mind the gossip. How will you make a living?" "Don't worry, Mom." I looked at her steadily. "I'm still young and strong, and I'm good with my hands. I'll find a way. Besides, times are changing. The markets in the city are lively again. I want to try doing a little business. At least we won't starve." Mom hesitated, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "But doing business, that used to be considered profiteering. People got arrested for it." "It's different now," I explained patiently. "I heard from Mrs. Swack Zhang in the compound that her cousin down south has already started selling goods at a street stall. No one's stopping them anymore. The policies are loosening. As long as we work honestly, don't steal, don't cheat, earning money with our own hands won't be a problem." I knew she still had doubts. After all, in those days, doing business was something new and risky. But I had already made up my mind. I couldn't keep living under someone else's shadow, spending my days afraid to offend or disappoint. "Mom," I said sincerely, meeting her eyes, "for me, this divorce isn't an end, it's a new beginning. I want to use my own 2 hands to build a good life for both of us, one where we don't have to depend on anyone or live by anyone else's mercy." Mom was silent for a long while, her eyes glistening as she studied my face. Finally she nodded, her voice soft but firm. "All right, I believe you, Anna. As long as you've made up your mind, I'll stand by you." "Then I'll support you," Mom said firmly. "No matter what happens in the future, I'll stand by you." Hearing that, I felt a deep sense of relief. The sunlight streamed through the window, landing on the table, filling the whole room with warmth and brightness. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be smooth, but as long as I stayed true to myself and lived for my own sake, I was certain I could carve out a life that truly belonged to me. Once I decided to start a small business, I began thinking right away about what to sell. Osmanthus cakes and sour jujube cakes. Those were my specialties, the recipes my grandmother had taught me. They were sweet but not cloying, soft and fragrant, and the ingredients weren't hard to find. Osmanthus flowers could be picked from the hills outside town, and there were plenty of wild jujubes growing near the village. Flour and sugar would cost money, but not too much. The expenses could be managed. Most importantly, hardly anyone in the city was making handmade pastries like these anymore. They'd probably be quite popular. I shared my plan with Mom. She listened intently, absent-mindedly tugging at the edge of her apron. Osmanthus cake, huh? I remember your grandmother's were delicious, she said, frowning slightly. But do you really think people will buy them? Everyone's used to buying pastries from the supply cooperative. Who's gonna buy something homemade like ours? Mom, I said, analyzing it carefully. The pastries from the cooperative are expensive and so sweet they make your teeth ache. And they're all machine-made. They don't smell or taste half as good as ours. The ones we make will use real, fresh ingredients. Osmanthus and jujubes picked the same day. People will feel safe eating them. And if we price them a little cheaper than the stores, there's bound to be someone willing to try. But flour and sugar cost ration tickets. And money. Mom said, her voice full of worry. We don't have much of either. Between your widow's compensation and the little I've saved, it's barely enough to get by. If we lose it, we'll have nothing left. I knew she was afraid of the risk. That little bit of money was all we had. I held her hand gently and said, Mom, I've already done the math. We'll start small. Just buy 2 pounds of flour and half a pound of sugar. I'll go pick the osmanthus and jujubes tomorrow morning. That won't cost a thing. Even if they don't sell, we can still eat them ourselves. It's not really a loss. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she looked at me, saw the hope in my eyes, and sighed. All right then, we'll give it a try. But you must be careful. Don't let anyone catch you and accuse you of profiteering. Don't worry, Mom, I said, smiling. I'll find a quiet spot in the market, go early, and come back early. Nothing will happen. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I set off for the outskirts with a bamboo basket on my back. The spring air was cool and damp, the morning fog still hanging low. Dew clung to the blades of grass by the roadside, soaking the hem of my pants. At the foot of the hill, the osmanthus trees were lush and golden, their tiny blossoms covering the branches and filling the air with a rich fragrance. I picked them carefully, one handful at a time, until my fingers turned slightly red from the sticky sap, but my heart felt light and clean. When I finished with the flowers, I headed to the nearby village to look for wild jujube trees. The branches were heavy with small red fruits, glowing in the sunlight. I filled my basket until it was overflowing. By the time the sun rose fully, I was on my way home. When I got back, Mom had already bought the flour and sugar and was waiting in the courtyard for me. You must be exhausted, she said, taking the basket from my back and wiping the sweat from my forehead with a soft towel. Sit down and rest a bit. I'll boil some water. You can start cleaning the osmanthus and jujubes. For the next 2 days, Mom and I kept ourselves busy at home. The osmanthus needed to be cleaned of stems and leaves, washed gently with clear water, and dried completely. The jujubes had to be pitted, each step done with care and patience. We mashed the osmanthus and jujubes into a soft paste, mixed them into the dough with sugar, and kneaded everything until smooth before steaming. I made sure to follow every step carefully, just as Grandma had taught me. The aroma that filled the kitchen was exactly the same as when she made it, sweet, warm, and comforting. When the osmanthus cakes came out of the steamer, their golden fragrance spread through the air. They were white and fluffy, soft to the touch. The sour jujube cakes, glowing red, were perfectly sweet and tart, appetizing just to look at. Mom took a bite and her eyes lit up. This tastes amazing, she said, pleasantly surprised. Even better than what they sell at the cooperative store. Looking at the table full of freshly made cakes, I felt both excited and nervous. Everything was ready now. All that was missing was more money to buy ingredients and make a bigger batch to sell at the market. I knew Mom had a little private savings, money she'd quietly set aside over the years, skipping meals and small comforts. She had meant to keep it for emergencies, maybe for me. That evening at dinner, I hesitated before finally bringing it up. Mom, I said softly, if we're really going to set up a stall, we should make more cakes. The more we make, the more we can sell. Could you maybe lend me a little of your savings so we can buy extra ingredients? Her hand froze midair, the chopsticks hovering over the bowl. She lowered her eyes and stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then she put the chopsticks down, stood up, and went into the back room. When she came out, she was holding a small bundle wrapped in a handkerchief. She handed it to me and said, "There's 30 yuan in here and 20 jin of ration tickets. I've been saving this bit by bit. Take it." I held the little bundle in my hands. It felt heavy. When I unfolded the handkerchief, I saw a mix of large and small bills, all neatly stacked, and ration tickets carefully folded. My nose stung and tears welled in my eyes. "Mom, this is your retirement money. I can't take it." "Silly girl," she interrupted gently. "I'm old. I don't need much to live on. Take this money and use it well. As long as you can live a good life, I'll be at peace. This money isn't just for you, it's our capital, the start of our business together. Once we earn more, you can save it back for me later." I clutched the money and tickets tightly, my heart filled with warmth and determination. I knew this wasn't just capital, it was her trust, her faith in me, her hope for our future. "Don't worry, Mom," I said with conviction. "I'll work hard. I won't let you down." She smiled and nodded, then picked up a piece of osmanthus cake and put it in my bowl. "Eat up. We'll go to the market early tomorrow morning. Let's get there before others and find a good spot. Maybe we'll even sell for a nice price." I took a bite of the cake. Its sweet fragrance spread in my mouth, and warmth filled my chest. I knew this step meant there was no turning back. But I wasn't afraid. With Mom's support behind me, my own hands, and a dream of a better future, I was sure I could make this work. The next morning, at first light, Mom and I carefully packed the steamed osmanthus and sour jujube cakes into clean bamboo baskets, ready to head to the eastern market to set up our stall. Just as we were about to leave, a light knock sounded on the courtyard door. "Who could that be?" Mom muttered, wiping the flour from her hands before getting up to open it. Standing outside was Mandy Shen, wearing a fitted floral blouse made of shiny dakron fabric. Her hair was slicked back neatly, glistening under the spring sunlight, and she had a touch of snow cream on her cheeks, giving her a bright, polished look. She had once been a close friend of mine from the military compound, and was also the younger sister of one of Ethan's staff officers. Back then, she'd always found excuses to linger around him. "Auntie Anna," she said sweetly, her lips curving into a smile. "I just came to check in on you two." Her eyes darted quickly between me and Mom, then settled on the bamboo baskets on the table. A flicker of curiosity flashed across her face. Mom clearly hadn't expected her visit. Mom froze for a moment, clearly surprised, before stepping aside. "Mandy, come in and sit," she said politely. I didn't stop what I was doing, carefully dividing the cakes into smaller portions and wrapping each one neatly in clean wax paper. Without looking up, I said evenly, "You're here." Mandy walked over to the table, pretending to examine the bamboo baskets with curiosity. "Anna, what's all this? It smells amazing," she said with exaggerated sweetness, reaching out to take one. I quietly moved the basket back, just far enough to avoid her hand. "Homemade osmanthus and sour jujube cakes," I replied calmly. "I'm taking them to the market to sell." Her hand froze midair, the smile on her face faltering for a second, before she quickly recovered it. "Anna, you just got divorced. Why rush into something like this? It must be exhausting." She sighed softly, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "And Ethan, how could he be so heartless? After all, you two were married for years. Couldn't he at least try to help you a little?" I looked up at her. Her gaze flickered nervously, unable to meet mine. There was clearly more behind her words than she dared to say. I smiled faintly. "Help me? How exactly? Should he take back the divorce papers, or give me some money so I can sit at home waiting to be taken care of?" Mandy's face stiffened. "I didn't mean it like that," she stammered quickly. "I just meant, it's not easy for a woman to run a business. What if people start gossiping or accuse you of profiteering? It's not worth the risk." "I earn money with my own hands," I said evenly, handing a package of jujube cakes to Mom. "I don't steal, and I don't cheat. What's not worth it about that? Depending on others never lasts. Only when you have your own skill can you really stand on your own." Mom nodded in agreement. "That's right," she said firmly. Mandy, my daughter just wants to make an honest living. We're not afraid of gossip as long as we do things properly. Mandy glanced between the two of us, her expression tightening. There was an unmistakable edge of curiosity, and something else behind her eyes. So Anna? She asked directly, what's your plan now? Are you just going to keep doing this little business forever? Or have you thought about finding someone new to marry? Her question was blunt, clearly meant to probe whether I had plans to remarry, or perhaps to make sure I wasn't planning to go back to Ethan. I laughed inwardly, but kept my face calm. The future will take care of itself, I said lightly. Right now, I just want to focus on my work and give Mom and myself a better life. As for remarriage, things like that can't be forced. Some people spend so much time coveting what doesn't belong to them that they end up losing their own dignity. Mandy's face flushed instantly. Of course, she caught the meaning behind my words. Her lips twitched and she forced a stiff smile. Anna, what's that supposed to mean? I came here out of kindness, and this is how you talk to me? Nothing, I said evenly, standing up and lifting the bamboo basket. But thank you for your concern, Mandy. We need to get to the market early to claim a good spot, so we'll have to excuse ourselves. Mom stood as well, her tone polite but firm. Mandy, I'm sorry, dear. We've got a busy day ahead. If there's nothing urgent, you should head home. We'll catch up another time. Mandy clearly hadn't expected to be dismissed so directly. The smile on her face faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation and unwillingness. She opened her mouth as if to say more, but when her eyes met mine, steady and unyielding, she swallowed her words. Well, I'll be going then, she said finally, her voice tight. Mandy forced a stiff smile, then turned and walked toward the door. As she reached the threshold, she paused and glanced back at the table full of cakes. Her expression was complicated, something between envy and frustration, before she quickly left. Watching her figure disappear down the path, Mom exhaled in relief. That girl's visit today wasn't just a friendly call, she muttered. I don't think her intentions were good. Good intentions? I scoffed softly. She just came to see how miserable I looked after the divorce, and maybe to check whether I'd get in the way of her little plans. Mom frowned, lowering her voice. You mean, her and Ethan? Let's not talk about them, I interrupted calmly. What matters now is our own life. That's the only thing worth caring about. I lifted the heavy bamboo basket. Inside it weren't just cakes. It was hope. Hope for Mom and me, for our future. Mandy's little test was nothing more than a passing distraction. She wanted to see me fall, but I would make sure to live well, better than she could ever imagine. I'd show her that even without Ethan Brooks, I, Anna, could still thrive. Come on, Mom, I said with a smile. Let's get to the market. We can't let something small like this delay us. Mom nodded, picked up the other basket, and followed me out of the courtyard. The sun was warm and bright, and the streets were slowly filling with people. I could feel it in my heart. My new life was only just beginning. The market on the east side of town was already bustling. Even before we reached the entrance, I could hear the calls of vendors echoing through the street. People selling vegetables, eggs, and fabric. Stalls lined up one after another, crowded with lively voices. Spring sunlight poured over the cobblestone road, warm and vibrant, carrying the scent of food and life. Mom and I found a spot by the side of the street, not too far from the crowd, but quiet enough to settle in. We spread out a clean burlap sack and placed the bamboo baskets of cakes on top. We had barely finished setting up when a middle-aged woman passing by stopped, sniffing the air curiously. Miss, what are you selling? Smells wonderful. Ma'am, I said with a bright, friendly smile, these are homemade osmanthus cakes and sour jujube cakes, all handmade. Please, have a taste. I picked up a small piece of osmanthus cake and offered it to her. Business, I knew, depended on sincerity and warmth. The woman took a bite, and her eyes lit up. Oh my, this is delicious. Sweet but not heavy, and it smells so fragrant. Much better than what they sell at the cooperative. Her voice carried through the market, drawing the attention of others nearby. Soon, several people gathered around our stall, peeking curiously at the cakes. I took the chance to speak up. Ladies and gentlemen, everything here is fresh. The osmanthus flowers were picked just this morning, and the jujubes are wild grown. Clean, natural, and safe to eat. 3 packs for 1 yuan, or you can trade 3 packs for 2 jin of ration tickets. A good deal either way. I had already planned the pricing carefully, half the price of the cooperative and accepting both cash and ration tickets. It was affordable, flexible, and bound to attract more customers. I'll take 3 packs of osmanthus cakes, the first woman said cheerfully, pulling a yuan from her pocket. I'll take 2 packs of the sour jujube cakes, with ration tickets, said a young wife beside her. Mom and I quickly got to work. I handled the money and handed out the cakes while Mom organized the wrapped packages, sorting them neatly. Our hands moved fast, and in no time, business was booming. My heart swelled with joy. For the first time in a long while, I felt the pure satisfaction of earning something through my own effort. My smile became genuine, bright, and full of life. Before long, our little stall was surrounded by people. Everyone who tasted the cakes couldn't stop praising them, buying 1 pack, then 3, chatting happily as they filled their baskets. Some said they'd bring them home for their children. Others wanted their elderly parents to try something fresh. "Miss, your cakes are wonderful," one man said warmly. "When will you be back again?" An old man who had just bought 5 packs asked cheerfully. "Sir, I'll be here every day from now on," I replied in a loud, clear voice, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "If you ever want more, just come find me right here." It was half an answer, half a bit of free advertising. The stall was buzzing with activity when a man in a khaki uniform suddenly approached, frowning as he looked down at our table. "You're setting up a stall without permission? Don't you know private trading and profiteering are still prohibited?" The lively chatter around us fell silent in an instant. Every customer turned to look. Mom's face went pale and she instinctively tried to hide the basket behind her. My heart skipped a beat too, but I quickly calmed myself, forcing a steady smile. "Comrade," I said politely, "this isn't profiteering. These are handmade pastries I made myself. I'm earning through my own skills. The new policies already allow ordinary folks to do a little business to make ends meet. Everything here is made with real ingredients, honest and fair. I'm not cheating anyone. If you don't believe me, please, try one yourself." I offered him a piece of sour jujube cake. The man hesitated for a moment, then took it and took a bite. His tightly knit brows slowly relaxed. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, just looked over my stall again, then glanced at the customers holding cakes in their hands. "Next time, be careful," he said finally. "Don't block traffic and make sure you're not selling spoiled goods." Then he turned and walked away. Mom exhaled loudly, patting her chest. "Good heavens, that scared me to death. I thought they were going to confiscate everything." "It's okay, Mom," I reassured her with a small smile. "We're doing honest work. We've got nothing to be afraid of." Inside, though, I silently thanked my quick thinking. Staying calm had saved us. After that little scare, business actually got better. The small commotion had drawn even more attention, and word spread fast. My pastries were good, and even the official hadn't said anything bad. People bought more confidently than ever. By the time the sun was high overhead, our baskets were almost empty. Only a few small packages were left. I counted the money and ration tickets in my hands, 15 yuan and more than 30 jin worth of tickets. Mom's eyes glistened with tears as she stared at the money. "Anna, this is amazing. We earned all this in just 1 day. That's more than your father used to make in a whole month." I couldn't hold back my joy either. This was the first money I'd earned since the divorce, my first true income, made with my own hands. It wasn't just money. It was validation, proof that I could stand on my own. And deep down, I knew that if I kept working hard, I could give Mom and myself a better life. "Let's pack up, Mom," I said, smiling. "Tomorrow, we'll make more and sell even better." We gathered our baskets and shared a glance filled with hope and pride before heading home. The afternoon sunlight was warm, the air full of life. I held tightly to the money and ration tickets in my hand, my steps light and confident. People we passed on the road no longer looked at us with pity or disdain. There was respect in their eyes now, even a touch of envy. I knew this was only the beginning. My good days were just getting started. Business at the market grew better with each passing day. In less than half a month, I had made nearly 100 yuan and collected a good number of ration tickets. Mom's smile came more easily now, and she stood taller, Her shoulders no longer hunched with worry. Every time she went to the market with me, she chatted happily with regular customers, laughter replacing the frown she used to wear. Word of our success quickly spread back to the military compound. Many of the officers' wives had heard that after my divorce, I had started a stall and was earning real money. The way they looked at me had completely changed. The looks people gave me were no longer filled with pity or judgment. Now, there was admiration and even a little envy. That afternoon, I had just returned from the market and set the bamboo basket down in the courtyard when I saw Ethan Brooks standing by the gate. He was still dressed in his sharp military uniform, but his usual coldness was gone. Instead, he wore an awkward, practiced smile, the kind that tried too hard to seem kind. In his hand, he held a mesh bag filled with fruit and pastries. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. I didn't have to guess why he was there. He must have heard that my business was doing well and decided I was useful again, so now he wanted to come crawling back. "Anna," he began, his tone noticeably softer than before, even slightly ingratiating. "I came to see you and your mom." Mom came out of the house, and the moment she saw him, her face darkened. Without saying a word, she turned around and went back inside, leaving him standing awkwardly at the doorway. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, my voice cool and distant. "Captain Brooks, what do you want? My mother and I are doing just fine. You don't need to concern yourself with us anymore." His smile faltered, clearly not expecting my attitude to be so cold. He took a step forward, trying to enter the yard, but I lifted my arm, stopping him. "Captain," I said evenly, "this is my home. You don't get to come in whenever you please. Whatever you have to say it here." By then, a few neighbors had poked their heads out to watch. Ethan's face stiffened, embarrassment flickered across it, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Anna," he said quietly, "I know I was wrong before. I shouldn't have divorced you so rashly. I know you're angry, but we've been husband and wife. There's no need to be so heartless." "Rashly?" I let out a short, humorless laugh, my voice low but sharp with sarcasm. "Ethan, when you shoved that divorce certificate in my face and forced me to sign it, did you think you were being rash then? When you said I was too plain, that I embarrassed you, were you thinking about being husband and wife?" My words stirred a murmur among the onlookers. Someone whispered, "So that's what happened. He's the one who dumped her first." Another added, "Now that she's making money, he's trying to crawl back." Typical. Ethan's face turned red, then white, then red again. He lowered his voice, visibly flustered. "Anna, those were words said in anger. I didn't mean them. But think about it, what you're doing now, selling on the street. Sure, it brings in money, but it's not respectable. It's not a long-term life. If we got back together, you'd be a commander's wife again. No more exhaustion, no more standing in the sun every day. I could even help you get an easy job." His tone dripped with superiority, as if his offer were some kind of grand favor. I looked at him, amused and disgusted all at once. "Respectable? In your eyes, earning an honest living with my own hands isn't respectable, but being looked down on and discarded by you is?" I smiled faintly, but my words were sharp. "You're wrong, Ethan. Now I make my own money, buy what I want, and don't have to depend on anyone. That's what real dignity looks like." He had no comeback. His face went pale with anger. "Anna, don't be so ungrateful. I'm being sincere. Do you really plan to sell pastries forever? You're a woman. When you get old, who's going to take care of you?" "I don't need you to take care of me," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I can support myself and my mother now, and I'll keep doing so in the future. But you, Captain Brooks, maybe instead of worrying about me, you should think about how to manage your own life better. Stop doing the kind of things you wouldn't want people to see." At that, Ethan's eyes flickered, guilt flashing across them. He instinctively glanced around, realizing the neighbors were still watching. Ethan's eyes darted nervously around, clearly afraid I'd say something that would expose him further. "Anna, what exactly do you want?" His tone turned impatient. "Name your condition. As long as you agree to remarry me, I'll do whatever you ask." "My condition is very simple," I said, meeting his gaze squarely and speaking each word slowly and clearly. "From now on, stay out of my life and my mother's. We'll go our separate ways and never have anything to do with each other again." With that, I turned to go back inside, but Ethan grabbed my arm in a panic. Anna, don't be impulsive. Think it over. Let go, I snapped, shaking his hand off with force. My voice rose, clear and firm. Ethan Brooks, listen to me. Even if I never marry again, even if I sell pastries until I'm old and gray, I will never, ever remarry a selfish, ungrateful man like you. So stop dreaming. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. People were whispering to each other, some even nodding in approval. Good for her, someone said. That kind of man doesn't deserve a second chance. Another added, he dumped her first, now he wants her back? Too late for that. Ethan's face burned red, then pale again, like he'd been slapped in front of everyone. He glared at me furiously, grabbed his bag of fruit, and stormed off, leaving as fast as he could without looking back once. As his humiliated figure disappeared down the street, my neighbors clapped and cheered. Well said, Anna. That's how you deal with a man like that. Exactly, he was cruel before, now he regrets it? Serves him right. Mom came out of the house, smiling proudly. Anna, you did the right thing, that's exactly how it should be. Now he knows you're not someone to be pushed around, he won't dare bother you again. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Ethan's regret meant nothing to me. I was no longer the timid woman who had once revolved around him, swallowing my pride just to keep the peace. That version of me was gone. Now I lived for myself, and no one would ever control my life again. But Ethan and Mandy Shen stayed quiet for only a few days. I knew they wouldn't take their humiliation lying down. They had lost face and couldn't stand seeing me thrive. Sooner or later, they'd try something. I was already prepared for it. At the market, I made sure every batch of ingredients was spotless and every step of my process clean and careful. I also built good relationships with the other vendors nearby, especially those who had regular stalls, and chatted warmly with returning customers. People noticed sincerity. My cakes were honest, the prices fair, and soon enough, most of the market folk were on my side. That morning, business was busy as usual. The street was crowded, and I was handing out cakes to customers when suddenly a sharp, shrill voice cut through the air. Everyone, come look. This woman's pastries are filthy. I ate her jujube cake and was vomiting all night. I looked up sharply. There stood Mandy Shen, supporting a middle-aged woman with a pale face. The two of them were shouting right in front of my stall. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd as people began to gather, pointing and whispering. The cheerful bustle of business stopped instantly. Mom's face went white with fear. Mandy, don't make things up, she said quickly. Our pastries are clean and fresh, we make them new every day. No one has ever gotten sick from them. Making things up? Mandy let out a cold, mocking laugh and pointed to the woman beside her. This is my cousin. She bought your sour jujube cakes yesterday. After eating them, she was sick all night, vomiting and running to the toilet. She's still too weak to stand properly. If you don't believe me, we can go to the hospital to check if you don't believe us, Mandy's so-called cousin said, coughing a few times for effect before frowning. That's right, I've lived this long and never eaten something so harmful. Are you trying to make dirty money off people's suffering? The crowd began murmuring, voices rising all around me. Some looked doubtful, but others started to scold me outright. How could you sell food like that? Someone said. Don't you care about other people's health? Another chimed in. You should refund their money and pay their medical expenses. Mandy stood there with her arms crossed, an arrogant smirk tugging at her lips, her eyes full of mockery. She clearly thought she had me cornered, that there was no way out this time. I knew immediately this was her and Ethan Brooks's doing. They'd planned it together, hoping to ruin my reputation so I couldn't do business anymore. But I didn't panic. I simply looked at Mandy, calm and steady. So, you're saying your cousin ate my jujube cakes and got sick? I said evenly. Do you have any proof? Proof. Mandy snorted and pulled a grease-stained paper bag from her pocket, tossing it onto my table. Here it is. These are the leftover cakes she bought from you yesterday. See for yourself. Aren't these yours? I opened the bag. Inside were indeed my handmade sour jujube cakes. The same shape, same wrapping, but the surface was dusted with some kind of yellow powder, and a strange, bitter smell came off them. I knew right away what they had done. The cakes were mine, but someone had tampered with them afterward. Lifting the bag high, I turned so everyone around could see. Everyone, take a look, I said clearly. My cakes are always clean and fresh, sweet and tangy, never with this strange powder. I make the same amount every day, and I remember exactly who I sold the last 3 packs to yesterday. It was to this lady here. She even tried to bargain for a discount, and when I didn't agree, she wasn't very happy. Then I looked directly at the pale woman. "Ma'am, you said you bought my cakes yesterday and got sick. Then can you tell us, what did my stall look like at the time? What was I wearing?" The woman froze, her eyes darting nervously. She stammered but couldn't answer. Mandy quickly stepped in, her tone sharp. "She's been sick all night. How could she remember details like that? Stop trying to change the subject, Anna. You owe us an explanation today." "An explanation?" I gave a short, cold laugh and turned toward a nearby vegetable vendor. "Mrs. Zhang," I called, "you were here yesterday when this lady supposedly bought my cakes. Do you remember her?" Mrs. Zhang was a straightforward woman. Without hesitation, she nodded. "Of course I do. She bought your cakes yesterday, and after that she was talking to a man in uniform. Looked familiar too. I think he was Captain Brooks." The crowd erupted into whispers. Mandy's face turned pale as chalk. "That's a lie," she shouted. "My cousin doesn't even know Captain Brooks." "I'm not lying," Mrs. Zhang said firmly, her hands on her hips. "I saw him with my own eyes. That man was definitely Captain Brooks, and he even helped her carry her things. Looks to me like you two came here together to stir up trouble." At that, a few of my regular customers stepped forward to back me up. "That's right," one of them said. "We've been buying Anna's pastries for weeks, never had a single problem." Another added, "Yeah, they're just trying to frame her. You can see it plain as day." I looked at Mandy's flustered expression and felt a cold satisfaction rising in my chest. "Mandy," I said slowly, my voice calm but cutting, "did you really think bringing someone here to make a scene would ruin my business?" "Don't forget," I said coldly, my voice cutting through the crowd. "Secrets never stay buried. You've been hanging around Ethan Brooks every single day. Everyone in the compound knows it. I'm divorced now, and you couldn't wait to climb up the ladder. You couldn't stand seeing me doing well, so you teamed up to bring me down. Lies." Mandy's face flushed red, her voice trembling with anger. "You're spouting nonsense." "Am I?" I raised my voice, making sure everyone around could hear. "Yesterday, your so-called cousin bought cakes, while Ethan stood right beside her. And today, the two of you show up together to stir up trouble. How is that not planned? You don't just want to ruin my business. You want to destroy my reputation so you can justify being together in public." The murmuring in the crowd swelled. People began glaring at Mandy and the pale woman with disgust. Someone whispered, "I know her. She's always been seen with Captain Brooks." Suddenly, everything clicked for the onlookers. "So that's what this is about. She wanted to steal another woman's husband and then tried to ruin her? Shameful." Captain Brooks, too, divorced just recently and already sneaking around with another woman? Plotting against his ex-wife? Unbelievable. Right then, someone in the crowd shouted, "Captain Brooks is here." Everyone turned, and sure enough, Ethan Brooks was pushing his way through the crowd. He must have come, worried that Mandy couldn't handle it herself, planning to back her up. But the moment he stepped in, dozens of angry eyes turned toward him. "Captain Brooks, how could you do something like this?" a man shouted. "Your ex-wife is earning her living honestly. Instead of supporting her, you team up to destroy her business? Shame on you. You're a soldier. What kind of example is this?" Another woman added. Ethan's face turned ashen. He hadn't expected the situation to spiral like this. He opened his mouth to explain, but his voice was drowned in the angry outcry. Mandy, realizing things were going south fast, grabbed the middle-aged woman and tried to slip away. But several stall owners blocked her path. "Trying to run? You'd better explain yourselves first." Under the mounting pressure, the sick woman finally broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she cried. "I didn't want to cause trouble. She gave me 50 yuan to pretend I got sick. I never even ate the cakes." The truth landed like a thunderclap. The crowd erupted in fury. People pointed and shouted, some scolding, others cursing outright. "You two are disgusting. 50 yuan to ruin someone's life? Shame. Serves you right. Get out of here." Unable to bear it any longer, Ethan and Mandy shoved their way through the crowd, their faces pale and humiliated, and fled down the street under a storm of insults. As I watched them stumble away, I felt a heavy weight lift off my chest. The whole farce hadn't destroyed my business. It had exposed their lies and their affair for everyone to see. By that very afternoon, word had already spread through the entire military compound. Everyone was talking about how Captain Brooks and Mandy Shen had conspired to frame his ex-wife. Their names were on every tongue, followed by contempt and disgust. People pointed at them behind their backs, whispers followed them everywhere. Mandy stopped showing her face entirely, hiding out at her brother's house. She didn't even dare go grocery shopping until after dark. As for Ethan, his fall was even harder. His reputation was in ruins. His fellow officers avoided him, and the soldiers who used to fawn over him now kept their distance. Within days, the disciplinary order came down. Ethan Brooks was stripped of his rank as captain, demoted for misconduct, and reassigned for behavior unbecoming of an officer and disrupting civilian relations. When the news spread, the compound buzzed with sighs and gossip. Everyone agreed he had brought it on himself. Watching their downfall, I felt no gloating satisfaction, only a quiet, peaceful relief like a long storm had finally passed. All those tangled grudges and bitter memories finally ended with their departure, leaving behind a full stop to that painful chapter of my life. Mom and I soon agreed it was time to move out of the military compound. Though we'd lived there for years, it was filled with memories, most of them ones I didn't care to revisit. Besides, running into old acquaintances who'd bring up the past would only reopen wounds. It was better to start fresh somewhere new. With the money we'd earned from selling pastries, we rented a modest shop in the city center. The rent wasn't cheap, but the location was excellent. Plenty of foot traffic, perfect for a pastry shop. Mom was hesitant at first, worrying about the expense, but I sat her down and showed her the numbers. "Mom," I said, "we can't keep selling from a street stall forever. Having a proper shop means stability and respect. We'll attract more customers, and before long, we'll make back the rent." She thought about it for a while, then nodded and started helping me prepare. We decided to name the shop Evening Fragrance Pastry House. Simple, memorable, and carrying both my name and the sweet scent of our pastries. We didn't bother with fancy renovations. We cleaned and repainted the walls, set out a few neat tables and chairs, and hung a bright, hand-painted sign above the door. Just like that, our shop began to take shape. Besides my usual osmanthus and sour jujube cakes, I experimented with new flavors. Red bean cakes and walnut cakes, made with honest ingredients and the same handmade care. The day before opening, I made several large trays of samples and handed them out for free to neighbors and passers-by. "Try them first," I said with a smile, "and if you like them, come visit us tomorrow." When opening day came, we didn't have drums or banners, but thanks to the good reputation I'd built from my market stall, many old customers showed up specially to support us. The shop quickly filled with people. Everyone admired the clean, bright space and the warm, sweet aroma of fresh pastries drifting through the air. "Anna, this shop looks wonderful," one woman said cheerfully. "So much better than the market. Now I can just come here anytime instead of waiting for market day." "The walnut cakes are amazing," said another customer. "You use such good ingredients. I'll bring my friends next time." Mom and I barely had a moment to breathe, running around to serve everyone. But even in our exhaustion, our hearts felt light and sweet. Watching customers smile as they tasted our cakes, hearing their kind words, I knew I'd made the right choice. Business grew better every day. Before long, I hired 2 quick-handed women to help in the kitchen, so Mom wouldn't have to work so hard. She spent her mornings tidying the shop, then sat by the door in the afternoons, smiling as she watched people pass by. Several people even tried to introduce me to potential suitors, factory workers, civil servants, small business owners, but I turned them all down politely. It wasn't that I didn't believe in love anymore, I just felt my life was already full. I had my own business, my independence, and Mom by my side. My days were peaceful and fulfilling. As for love, it would come if it was meant to. There was no need to chase it. One night after closing, Mom and I sat under the warm shop light, counting the day's earnings. The thick stack of bills in her hands made her eyes misty. "Anna," she said softly, her voice full of emotion, "I never thought we'd live like this one day. I used to worry that after your divorce, life would be hard. But now, I see I was wrong. I held her hand, smiling. Mom, this is what we built together. Things will only get better from here. We'll not only keep our shop. We'll make Evening Fragrance Pastry House known to everyone, so more people can taste what we make. Mom nodded, eyes shining with hope. Moonlight streamed through the window, bathing the little shop in silver light. It illuminated everything. The clean tables, the shelves of pastries, and the peaceful smiles on our faces. It also lit the open road ahead of us, bright and boundless. In the spring of 1978, I broke free from the chains of an unhappy marriage and embraced a new beginning. I seized the opportunity of a changing era and, with my own hands and determination, built the life I have today. All the pain and humiliation of the past had turned into strength and courage, fuel for the woman I'd become. I knew the road ahead was still long and would have storms of its own, but I no longer feared them, because now I knew how to live for myself and how to stand on my own. As long as I carried hope in my heart and worked with my hands, I believed I would continue to walk my own path, one bright with blossoms, fragrant and full of life.